Okay. Um, Thanks for joining. Welcome to our monthly webinar. We do these every month, try to provide information to participants. Today, we're going to get into the confidentiality and the importance of it in selling. I'm Owen Bondron. I'm a partner in Independent RX. I've been working in pharmacy all my life. Uh, and also own with Tim, who's on the Zoom here today as well, a compounding and long-term care pharmacy. If you don't know Independent RX, we do a number of things. We help people start and buy pharmacies. We do accounting and tax for pharmacies, and then why we're here today is we help people sell pharmacies. So we kind of help them through the life cycle of ownership of a business. I'll let Tim introduce himself.
Hey, good afternoon, Owen. I'm Tim Clark. I'm a pharmacist. Been a partner with Owen and his dad for, oh gosh, over 25 years. We've owned 30 stores together. We currently own a compounding pharmacy and long-term care pharmacy here in Ohio. And Owen and I started the consulting business with the helps really of trying to help people buy stores. And, it's kind of grown that now we help people buy, sell, start, and then we do the accounting and data analytics for, I think, about 200 community pharmacies. I think we're both have a little bit different business backgrounds. I like pharmacy, as a pharmacist. And the great thing about Owen is that kind of like me. I mean, we both worked in the pharmacy since we were, in high school, and we've seen the business evolve and change a lot. So um, I think we can tell you we still like the business even after all this times with all the different challenges that we continue to have. But if you continue to evolve, pharmacy can be a great business for you.
Yeah, no, it's great. And today we're going to talk about confidentiality. Um, I think a lot of people are either worried about it, if they go to sell their pharmacy and it getting out that they're selling. And then we get the other half that are like, why does it matter? So, um, I thought we would start with why does it matter first. I don't know, Tim, if you want to maybe
Well, the
give
the the
some
the big
examples
thing
there.
about of why it really matters is that you want to keep your stuff, your business as private as possible. Um, there's lots of competition, probably locally or in your state, and you really don't want everybody to know everything about you. It's kind of like when you're selling your business is kind of going through a physical examination of everything of your business, from the finances to your lease, to your tax returns. What's your mix of prescriptions, your brand profile, what's your contract with your wholesaler, who's your PSAO. I mean, a lot of stuff that you might think is, well, as I'm talking to, let's say, people at trade shows, we do a lot of sharing of those things. And that's usually because we know who we're talking to and we know they're not a competitor. And for the most part, confidentiality it's important because you deserve some privacy.
Yeah. And, I have a marketing background, so I start worrying about business, right? So, to me, it's like, oh, if it gets out, do your competitors use that against you? Um, do people in the community start going, well, what happens when they sell and it's bought by someone else? It's not going to be the same, even though they don't know that. And do they transfer meds out? And now you know, you're doing less business, which can devalue your business. So, that keeping it confidential and it not getting out is important. And then, you know, the other factor that you got is just uh, you don't know how quickly you're going to sell it. And so, you've got employees who, uh, you don't want them to find out because they might quit on you, for example, and cause operational issues. They might, get worried and go, okay, I don't know what's going to happen and leave, and that causes a customer service issue. So, you know, keeping that keeping it confidential is important. And like Tim says, I mean, you also just don't want people to know all your stuff.
Well, you bring up a good point again about worry. I mean,
Mm,
it's true that if your employees know something, let's say like even that you're selling or you're considering selling, it creates a worry about them and their job. And obviously we all understand that. They 9 out of 10 times or more they like working for you, so you don't want to upset them. And frankly, your hope when you're selling it is that the new person who has it will employ them. You're also worried, like Owen says, about your customer. They've chosen to go to you because of you and your staff, and you don't want them to be given any advance warning that, hey, we're considering to do that, because then they start thinking, well, I've lost faith, and we don't want them to lose faith in us. um, However, there is a chance that out of the blue, and someone may say, hey, are you selling your pharmacy? And it may not even be a leak from someone telling them that. They can just be like, oh, I've heard it in the news, like the PBM stuff, or what's going to happen with the favored pricing for the top brand name drugs. I mean, they could just be worried about the stuff they hear in the news. Right now the biggest news story in the pharmacy business is all the chains that are closing.
yep.
I mean, so your customer is, now we're, it used to be that we were really more worried about these, I guess, food deserts, right? And now we have pharmacy deserts, which, if you don't know what that is, that means that there's probably not a pharmacy within 30 miles of where somebody lives.
Yep.
Which, and it used to be, as you know, like pharmacies were on every corner. It's, not only are we the most trusted, I mean, we're probably the most convenient, when it came to getting medical advice in your community.
Yeah.
So we don't want to create any more worry than we need to.
Yeah, and yeah, the worry can get out there and it can cause a trickle-down effect that can cause valuation problems, make it difficult for you in a difficult situation already because it's stressful to sell. So, the other factor is for the buyer, you know, we want to control that message. The buyer wants you to help them control the message with the employees, with the community. So it getting out too early will make it harder on your buyer as well. Because if you and the buyer have a singular message of what's going to occur and that you're both on the same page, it gives confidence to your employees and your customers, making it easier in the future for the buyer. And, that affects you potentially because you could have a seller note or a promissory note where you're holding some of it and, you want that business to continue really well, or you just have a legacy and you want your business to be around the next 20 years. And that allows the buyer to have a better chance of doing that. Um, so, and all of this gets a little bit emotional because you kind of think to yourself, well, I've worked with these people for 20 years. I need to tell them what's going on. I've known these patients for even longer. I need to tell them what's going on. But, it's not really in the interest of you or the buyer to do that until it's the appropriate time to do so. And that will get hard, but I would encourage you to to not tell anyone and really keep a close circle as to who you tell. Uh,
And I think that brings up, things like an NDA, and
mm,
what are
yeah,
things at the very beginning of this? What do you do to set in place this confidentiality? Um, certainly what you're saying. I mean, some of it falls upon us to just, for the most part, only tell people who need to know that, is one simple thing. And then it's the responsibility of people like me who are brokering the transaction of getting NDAs in place with whoever looks at it. And even and I think, Owen, you want to explain what an NDA does for the owner?
Yeah, so what it is it's a non-disclosure agreement. So it's basically getting whoever you're telling about the sale to sign a document that they're not going to disclose it outside of maybe their advisors, like their accountant or lawyer. And the the purpose of it is that you have a written agreement that they're not going to do that. And if they do and it gets out and it causes you business harm, there are consequences to that because you have a signed contract with them. And it's pretty standard that really anyone you tell about it, you could potentially give an NDA. And in particular, any potential buyer needs to sign one.
Right. And during that, like, even, I would suggest, that you just don't give anybody an NDA. I mean, the first
Yeah.
thing you do is and I guess what we do, full
Yeah.
transparency, is we try to vet anybody who's asking about the business. And it starts with how we market it. I mean, we try to market it with, to be honest, the least amount of business or information possible, because we're trying to create the chance that someone won't know from an ad or an email or something on the web that says, okay, my pharmacy's for sale. I mean, so there's got to be some veils in place to protect you even at the beginning of marketing it. And then as you market it, like, let's say someone reaches out to me, and I'm not going to tell them, oh, this is Bob's store, here in Centerville, Ohio. I'm not going to say that at all. I mean, I'm first going to talk to them and ask them, okay, hi, what's your name? What's your experience in pharmacy? Why are you going to buy this? You're trying to find their financial, situation. And and all those things are important to know first, even before I give you an NDA, because, I mean, yes, the NDA is a legal document that protects you. However, a lot of the stuff we tell you to do are stuff that, sounds like common sense, but they're definitely things that we have to do that are in our control without the legal document, which is, again, vetting somebody. And I assume, those are the things that, hopefully most people do when they're trying to sell their business.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know that they do or not. Us as pharmacy owners and pharmacists, we're fairly trusting of people. So, we kind of tell them, but, vetting that buyer and just finding out, I mean, there's no point in sending your tax returns, your financials, the name of your store, all these things to someone who can't buy it. It's just one more person who could tell one other person and then suddenly it gets out. It may not even be intentional. So we're sending it to the qualified buyers, right? Um, and I guess that even goes for, vendors. I mean, you got to watch who you tell from a vendor standpoint, right? Like, and when you tell them, because they might tell someone else or tell the owner down the street, or, it may not be an intentional thing. It could be that it came out or they were talking and it kind of slipped. But you tell the people that you need to tell.
well, and I know vendors can, let's say, help you,
Yes.
let's say, find people to buy your pharmacy. But let me be clear. I mean, your vendor doesn't want to lose your business. I mean, like, they don't want you're purchasing millions of dollars from them, and you sell, what happens to that business? even if it's selling, let's say, to someone who's doing business with that vendor, let's say it's with Amerisource, and you're selling to someone who's with Amerisource, it could now go to a different rep, or a different, component of their business, like, a chain component instead of an
Yeah.
independent thing. So I guess they can be helpful, but remember that, even your buying group is helpful. They want to
Yeah.
they want to stay there, and there's good people in place in these buying groups that can keep it confidential. I mean,
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
they can. Now, the only thing about that that's different than, let's say, me is, I mean, typically, I don't think they give that information without NDAs.
No.
I mean, like, I mean, I've had wholesalers reach out to me, say, "Hey, Tim, are you interested in buying this?" And they'll disclose the location, and now, maybe, I guess, that can be acceptable because they know me. I'm not going to go around and blab that, "Hey, did you know that Bob's Pharmacy in Centerville is for sale?" For instance, I'm not going to go do that, because me as an owner and someone who's gone through this process doesn't want anybody to know, and I don't want everybody to know what I know about you either. Like, but um, back to, again, it starts at the beginning of, you tell people who really need to know. I mean, your business advisors, like your accountants, don't be worried about talking to your accountant about it, or your attorneys about that, because they are your trusted advisors.
Yeah, that's the
Now,
job.
now your accountant doesn't have the legal obligation that your attorney has to keep the stuff private, but in general, they're going to, because they are people who want to see you successful. Your friends who aren't in the business, that are in other businesses, can also help you give advice, because, again, they might understand basic business, but you and I, who own the business, my biggest problem is I'm emotional. My biggest problem is that, I care about my business. And one of the problems that you can also have is, that you can deal with people who don't care about it. I
Yeah.
mean, like some people are just so, for lack of a better word, they're so inexperienced, that they just don't
Understand.
know.
Yeah. They don't know
They've
that.
never been through this. They don't know how it couldn't be hurtful. And then they're like, "Oh, well, yeah, that is." So,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
we talked at the beginning about competitors stealing business and et cetera, but that's not usually it is. It's usually someone accidentally leaks it, and then that has consequences to it. Um, and you wonder, okay, well, how in the world are we going to market this to all the potential buyers if we have to keep it confidential? Well, as Tim stated, I mean, what we're trying to do there is saying, hey, we've got a store in Texas and it's got this many prescriptions and it's got this much revenue and it does some compounding. We can be very general to get enough, pique people's enough interest enough to reach out. And then we have the opportunity to vet them, and then we can choose who we're sending information to. So it's certainly a fine line of when you tell people, who you tell, when, it it's a balance, and at times I'll tell you it'll probably feel a little awkward. Um,
yeah,
yeah. And even on top of that, I mean, we put together a book and send that out first before we send tax returns and all of that. So, you're going vetting buyer, NDA, book. Okay, now you're really interested. Yeah, we'll share the tax returns. We'll share all of that. And even some things we might hold back. So, for example, let's say you do a bunch of long-term care. Um, you don't want to disclose the names of those facilities until you have an offer and they're well into diligence. You may not even disclose them until you have a purchase agreement. So there's certain information you don't want to give out because it's just not needed. Yeah, that buyer's going to need the names of those facilities at one point. They may even need the contracts as part of their diligence, but until you know that they can buy it, they have the money to buy it, and they're serious, there's no point in using that.
And there's ways to mask that data too.
Yes.
I mean, like for instance, like on the one of the things we do in our book is try to explain to them that we don't have, let's say, one major provider that we're getting the business from. We'll let them see a mask, you know, code for
Yeah.
maybe a prescriber, but I'm not going to say it's Dr. John Smith.
Yeah.
Like now some of it is like completely obvious. As soon as they find out that you're in, let's say, a medical building, that's a little bit dicier because they're going to know that there's doctors in the building. They're going to check, which is again fine, but that's probably part of your business model of why it's successful.
Yeah. So then what happens if it does get out and you just get unlucky? You know, what do you need to be prepared for if, I don't know, your patients or
Well, the
employees find out?
my biggest fear is always my employees. My biggest fear is that my employees find out that my business is for sale. And what I try to explain is that you got to be ready for that. There's a chance. Now, you have to go through layers of stuff to find out it's you. But if someone does, and then they, the world is small, the degrees of separation between you and somebody else is really quite small, especially in the pharmacy business. I mean, you go, let's say you talk to Owen Bondurant. I mean, lots of people, and there's probably a few people between you and someone else that would know you. I mean, that's just how this thing works. Um, so you have to think about, okay, what do I do if my employee says, hey, Tim, what's going on? I heard your business is for sale. Or that it's, let's say you've sold to somebody. My first thing to tell you is to be truthful. But you don't have to tell them, hey, I'm selling to let's say Tim Clark. You should say, I'm considering selling my business. I'm looking at my, you know, whether you're at retirement age or your family situation, I am looking at options, but I'll tell you right here and right now, I haven't sold it yet. I mean, and then you can ask them, what are your concerns, and listen to them. You can't make any promises because you don't know who you're going to sell it to, but you can also, tell them, hey, it's not going to do anyone good by spreading this rumor. And explain to them the truth. Like, you go tell other people, then it could put our business in jeopardy. I mean, like, what happens if we don't sell or we don't find a buyer? I mean, to be completely frank, it's not like this business is going to sell in 30 days.
No.
A transaction can take, 3 months, 6 months. Sometimes if you've got, I'll say, sometimes if you have a bad attorney, or even a lender, I mean, it can take longer than that. I mean, because someone can make a mistake. That's usually why, I try to suggest you use somebody who's done this before, because usually the new people we bring into this, they don't know what they're looking at. I mean, they don't know what this stuff means. It's the same reason why we got into doing accounting for people, is like they didn't know what a DIR fee was, or they didn't understand the mechanism of how we get paid or how we purchase things with rebates. I mean, our business is pretty complicated. We don't have a cash business. I'm not running a gift shop.
No, and I mean, to your point, it can take a while. And so, explaining to that employee or just in your head, like you might find what you think is the right buyer, and then maybe you start working with them more and you're like, I don't think I like this person. And you decide to break out and you start the process back over. And, or let's say
That
you
is
get
a
into
that
the
is
purchase agreement and you just can't agree on something. Well, I mean, it's not, it just happens. Like, and you're not going to agree to things just to sell it, because there's another buyer. And so, I mean, it can take some time and, you've got to act like this business is not being sold and that it's just, ever. And you got to keep going forward and so do your employees.
and I like what you said about you as the seller. I mean, you really do get to decide who you sell it to.
Yeah.
I mean, now I would tell you like that is your decision. You may just have a bad vibe. Tim, this just feels weird to me. Blah blah blah. You know, I am not going to force you to sell it, and I'll go by your gut. You, you know, my job is to try to be as unemotional as I can to give you really good advice because that's what you need. You need advice. You need someone who just wants to see that you're going to be okay, who frankly, I'm going to be okay if I don't sell your store. I mean, like I am. This is your chance. You only get one chance to sell your business, and you either have to be okay, hey, I'm selling the business. Billy Bob or Sarah, who's ever buying it, to be honest, it's kind of like selling a house. You got to be okay that they are going to change your business.
Yeah. Agreed.
Our hope though is we sell it to someone who we think is going to be a good steward. And the biggest thing to me is that you have to understand who it is I'm selling to, and to be honest, you're never going to sell it to the perfect person.
Yeah. No, you
I
never.
mean, like
Yeah. You just
you
need to
and
feel,
and no deal is done until I get a check. I mean, until you get a check.
yeah.
I mean, you have to just be patient, which is really hard when you want to sell your business. You got to be patient because as soon as you look desperate, you lose all power.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, we typically wait to tell employees and vendors to the last. I mean,
Yep.
sometimes it's the day of closing, sometimes it's a week before. I mean, it can be late in the process because, as Tim said, these deals aren't done until you have money in your hand. So, you don't want to risk your business because emotionally you feel like you should do this.
And,
So
and it makes me think about something else. My biggest worry is my customers and my employees finding out. That's my biggest worry.
yeah,
But let me tell you something that I tell people all the time is that your biggest obligation is to you and your family.
yep. Well, you've been there,
You
right?
you know,
Um,
it's a
and
tough
it's a
situation.
tough thing, and I mean, we've seen it both ways, and I will tell you, it typically goes better when you wait. I mean, it's hard on the customers and the employees for a couple of weeks. But if you've done your job and you find a good buyer and, you know, most of the time they're okay. In fact,
The,
the employees will be fine. Um,
the worst thing you can do is get to a situation where you just have to close your business because you've messed up the sale.
yeah, agreed.
That's not good for anybody. It's not good for your
No,
patients, your customers, your family, nobody.
yeah. We have a good question here, and I want to preface before we answer that we are not lawyers. But it says if the potential buyer has a point person and they sign the NDA you provide, but there are other individuals involved on the buyer side that you, the seller, may not be aware of, how is the seller protected from other individuals? Well, most of these non-disclosures they'll have a clause in there that says, your advisors and I don't know the exact language but it covers, their accountants, their lawyers, their advisors, and other executives within their company. Um, there
And
is
cover
small risk if you
investors.
don't, other investors, yes. Um, if you don't know who they are, yeah, I mean, I guess there is that chance. Of course, they would have been the ones who told, so then they would have violated the NDA. Um, if you do know about other people who are going to be involved, so let's say it's two pharmacists who are going to buy, I would try to get both of them to sign the NDA. Um, you're not going to get accountants and other advisors to sign them, but they're covered in the NDAs. I hope that kind of answers your question. You get as many of the actual buyers to sign it. If they have other investors who are with them, they're probably under the non-disclosure. Um, and so are their advisors. And I would, we had an NDA created by a lawyer. And if you're doing this on your own or what have you, I mean, have your lawyer create that non-disclosure to try to cover people like that.
That's a good explanation, though. And the biggest thing to tell you is that it's you're going to want to get as many people as you can to sign an NDA because we don't want it to get out. But the reality of the fact is that if someone is involved in the transaction for the possible buyer, they are going to share that information, and that's completely typically covered in the NDA. I don't know what your NDA looks like, or your brokers or whoever. I can only tell you that that's how ours was created, and
Yeah.
I didn't create it. I didn't buy it off of lawyer.com. I used a corporate attorney to do it. Um, and our suggestion is that I mean,
Do the same.
you do that. You do that. It's not that
I mean,
expensive.
the reality is it's kind of like business. I mean, we can't control every little thing. All we can do is, like we talked about today, is take the steps to limit the chances of it getting out and do the
And
things that we can control. And, 99% of the time that will work.
and the biggest thing an NDA does, in my opinion, is it creates the seriousness of the information I'm giving you.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to send you this stuff, and you don't act like it's a big deal. I mean, like my let's say my job when I tell somebody that they need to sign it is I explain what an NDA is. I mean, I understand. They might not understand the seriousness of the information, but I tell them this is serious information.
Yeah.
And sometimes again, it's just letting someone know that this is serious. This is personal. Um, you can't ever protect yourselves from people who want to do you harm completely. There's bad people, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you, typically the worst thing that happens in this confidentiality thing is, like, if we're selling to a possible chain, that in their process, it goes the same way. They have to go through their district operators, their store managers, and then you've got a lot of, I'll just say, uneducated people who 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 just don't know how wrong they're being by saying something to somebody. So like especially if you're going through the route of the chain, I can't tell you that it's not going to go to their people. I mean, at some points, but that's why we have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. Is I've got to not be blindsided that someone could find out.
Yeah.
And it would take layers for that person to find out, but again, um, you can only do your best, and this is part of the process.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think we got the message across that try to keep it confidential.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the big thing, Owen, is like expectations, is that,
Yeah,
you when you're going through the process of selling, you've got to educate yourself as much as you can about what the process is so that you yourself don't get flustered and
true.
and even more upset than you're going to be, because again, selling your business is a personal thing. It's emotional, but there's business attributes to it that are, basically, we've got to act professionally.
Yeah, and
I
it's kind
mean,
of a
that's
weird thing because, as a business owner, a lot of business owners, and Tim, you in particular are like this, you know, if you've got something on your mind, you start asking people. Hey, what's your opinion on this? Hey, what's your opinion on this? Hey, and you just
oh
kind of want
yeah.
to hear information. And in the sell side, it's like, oh, I can only ask a couple people. It feels weird. So you as the owner, a lot of times are the one that, can be the biggest risk of not being confidential. Uh,
Well,
so
that is, well,
it's
I think
hard.
again, that's true, that we
Yeah.
really are. I mean, like, as this seller, I mean, we really are the biggest risk because we're typically a very trusting
We
group
have
of
to. We have to.
people.
We have to trust our employees. We have to. I mean, it's just part of being an entrepreneur. But when you sell, you have to kind of maybe flip that to a point until you find someone that you feel like you do trust. So
Yeah, and no one is. There's very few people that are really trying to damage you, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, it's
I
always
mean,
accidental. Yeah,
it's but the big thing is, like, when we're telling somebody, you have to explain that this is confidential and explain that it could hurt your employees and your customers. I mean, you just, it sounds so basic, but you have to explain to them why, not just tell them not to tell somebody,
yep.
and that's why.
Okay. Um, if you have questions, you can reach out to us. Our website's independentrxconsulting.com. Um, we are recording this webinar and we'll post it on social media, our website, and email it out. Thanks for joining. We will have another one about a month from now.
Great,
Thanks.
thanks, Owen.
See you.